Hello everyone, I'm Ben Coleman, one of your many hosts here at the Florida Aviation Network, coming to you live and in the clear from the Florida Air Museum, Lakeland Linder International Airport, no longer regional. I keep trying to catch myself from doing that. And we're here at the 45th Annual Sun and Fun Fly-In and Expo. And there we have manufacturers, we have vendors, we have suppliers, we have performers. They do an air show every day. We had the Blue Angels flying around the sky, and had the pleasure of talking to one of the ride hoppers for the Blue Angels. Rochelle Floyd was here with us yesterday, and you talking about somebody up on cloud nine. That woman was pumped up. She really enjoyed her ride, and that's good because she's going to share that with the kids here at the Aerospace Center for Excellence here on the campus of Sun and Fun. Whew. Okay, enough of the foreground. Let's go right directly to the playground. We're going to talk to Mr. Larry Kelly, old friend.
How you do, Ben?
Doing okay, Larry. Playground. Tell me what Larry's been doing to play here lately. And how did you get here, by the way?
Well, we flew in on the B-25 last Monday morning when the weather was still threatening just a little bit. But we've had some really beautiful weather this week, and it's nice to get out of the snow. Looked at the weather this morning, and it was snowing back up home.
Well, we had
so we were teasing a few people back home that, hey, well, it's 74 here in sunny.
Now, we had some sunshine this morning here in Lakeland. It was liquid sunshine.
Yeah, well, we woke up to that at the hotel this morning too, and they said, well, we forgot to put the covers on the airplane last night. We're in Florida. It's supposed to be sunshine.
So it just makes a little more polishing and rubbing it here and there. But Panchito she's close to my heart. That's the first. Killer Bee, I think, was the first B-25 experience I had the fortune of having with Tom Riley. And then you and I hooked up, and I guess you needed some help crewing it.
We needed to go to an air show one time, and I was short a co-pilot. So everybody always know this. So I called Ben. Ben said, sure. I said, well, Ben, you got to do 3 takeoff and landings before you're current in the airplane. Takeoff and landings to a full stop. Ben gets in the airplane, flies it around like he's been flying it all his life. The 3 best landings the airplane has seen all year long. So I said, we're in good hands now with Ben flying.
You're too kind, but now I have to tell you what he did tell me that made me so darn smooth. He says, if you can taxi to the end of the runway, I'll let you keep going.
That's what most people don't understand. The hardest part about flying a B-25 is not flying it. It just flies like a big old Cessna, a big old heavy Cessna. But if you can get at the end of the runway, the nose wheel is free castering. And it's like a shopping cart. So you go out on a Walmart parking lot and you shove a shopping cart across the lot, it's going to go down and try to find the lowest point, right, where the drain is. So just trying to taxi the airplane on a taxiway, there's a crown. So, so the rainwater run off to each side. So, a taxiway is not completely flat, neither is a runway. So if you're not dead center on that taxiway, the airplane's trying to roll off one way or the other. Well, most pilots, first thing they want to do is use brakes to try to keep it straight. Well, you can't do that. On this airplane, as you know, the brakes, there's 14 rotors and 15 stators in each brake pack, and the rotors are bronze over steel, so they're metal to metal rotors and stators, and they're in pack on each one brake pack on each side of the wheel, and there's no airflow over it. So every time you apply the brakes, you build up a lot of heat, and it takes a long time for that heat to dissipate. It's 15 minutes between landings, if you use the brakes on landing. So you can't use the brakes when you're taxiing, or the brakes will overheat and literally weld. They weld themselves together. So you wind up, you're having to taxi the airplane using the rudders, because twin tails rudders are in a slipstream. So rudders in the slipstream, and if that's not enough, then you jockey the throttles, just differential RPMs on the throttles. And then if you have to, then you can just light touches of the brakes maybe to make a turn. That's the most difficult thing people have fine. Of course, you did it well, but
you taught me well. But I've got to tell you though, I did have a little bit of help. Tom Riley.
But Tom's a good instructor.
Okay, it's rudder, power, brake, bam. Rudder, power, brake, bam. You just rudder, power, brake, bam. And I explained this. What do you mean? I had said rudder, power, differential power, then brakes. What's the bam part? Well, that's the part with Tom slapping me on the arm every time I touch the brakes. Because he said, every time you touch those brakes, $25. $25.
Well, he
$25.
He did you good
Stay
then,
off
because
the brakes.
when I bought the airplane, Tom taught me how to fly it. And first thing he did, I had to take a $100 bill out, fold it up, lay it up on the console, the ignition console. And if I got on the brakes before he thought it was appropriate, he'd just pick it up, put it in his pocket, put another one up there. So I learned to stay off the brakes real fast after I bought dinner for everybody over at Riley World, if you remember that at Tom Riley's place.
I remember that, but I remember also the bruises I had on my right arm from him pounding my, stay off the brakes. Okay, I got it, Tom.
And of course, Tom has just finished, the pinnacle of his career.
Yeah.
Airplane arrived yesterday morning, the XP-82. You could almost call it a home built, because probably 90% of that airframe was built from the North American drawings for the XP-82, the prototype. And he had very few parts to work from, a lot of crash site stuff, but he built that airplane from the drawings.
That's the ultimate form of fabrication.
Yeah, just phenomenal work.
I think, okay, something just changed, but I guess, oh, there she is.
Yep.
There's the girl.
Yeah, look, you can see underneath the wing, you can see the reflection of the pyrotechnics going off under the airplane.
Yeah,
that was taken at Oshkosh, from the Wall of Fire.
For our radio listeners, we are looking at photographs of Panchito. She's flying. Oh, there we go. There we go. And Larry, how long does it take to really put a nice polish on this B-25 that you fly?
All winter.
All winter.
Harry Fox and Steve Newer and Chuck Hepner and a couple of others spent all last winter polishing on the airplane. So they start early in the morning and sometimes 5 o'clock in the morning and polish for 7 or 8 hours at a time. So they started mid-December and they finished the day before we left to head down to Tycho, middle of March. So that's not 7 days a week, but that's out there several days each week.
But it's constant, keeping up with the maintenance on the aircraft. And
which is what I'm doing. I'm turning the wrenches on it. People see us at events like this, and they come up and they think, "Boy, this is really cool. You get to fly around a B-25." I said, let me tell you about when it's 20 degrees and you get home and you got so much hydraulic fluid on you, you can't even go in your house. You got to stand on the porch and strip down and throw the clothes in the incinerator to be incinerated, throw them in the burn pile, because you can't, they're not even worth trying to save, because you just spent 12 hours with hydraulic fluid dripping on you. We average, I think the shortest year we've ever had is 200 to 1, maintenance hours to flight hours. 2018, it was going to be closer to 400 to 1, maintenance hours to flight hours.
We got a couple engine changes, got some cylinders you got to...
Well, cylinder changes is just everything you have to do. Well, last year we recovered the elevators and the rudders and the ailerons. It was like recovering 4 Piper Cubs. The amount of work that went into all these control surfaces. And just everything else you got to do as far as the inspection. It's just always a ton of work.
Is that where the term labor of love comes from?
Well, yeah, spark plugs. You go out with your Iowa 320, change spark plugs. Well, 8 spark plugs, you clean them, put them back, and you're done in a couple hours, right? Clean, test, put them back. I have 56 spark plugs. And to get to them, it takes a day just to get all the baffling off and get the wires off. First day is just getting all the plugs out. The second day is going through, clean, gap, test, preparing them all to put back, and then another day putting spark plugs back, and then waiting for me to come along because I want to be the one to torque them all. Torque them all, and then generally another half of a day at least just putting all the bafflings back on, just because there's so many. 28 plugs in each engine.
It's a week change to do a plug
change. Do it, yeah.
Do it right. I just had a flashback. You mentioned Newer, Paul Newer. You did dub a term for me, Inspector Nom. You
remember that, yeah. That's when you violated Paul for not having in-flight beverage service on the B-25 when it was, what was it, about 10 below zero that trip?
It was cold, and the heater was not operational on that flight coming back from the Centennial.
Centennial flight at Kitty Hawk.
And we had some fun with that. I paid dearly out of Washington because the word got out that some inspector was playing a spoof on an airman. We'll talk about that at the bar.
Well, it was only the bureaucrats that had any problem with it. Everybody else thought it was great.
Well,
it was great fun.
You gotta throw some personality in it. And personality. I always look and regard you as a personality in aviation. And anybody that knows this man understands what I'm talking about. But we've got to keep that personality in aviation, not just to kiss the ring.
It's got to be fun.
I own a B-25. Yeah, kiss the ring.
Let me tell you a story.
Go.
There was a gentleman came to the hangar just a week or so ago. Highly skilled aviator, military background, etc. Wanted to join our team. He wanted to fly the airplane. And I said, well, first of all, we don't have pilots. You notice my shirt doesn't say pilot on it, right? Chris's shirt out there doesn't say pilot on it. Okay, you go out there, Sid's shirt doesn't say pilot on it. Nobody's shirt says pilot or co-pilot or mechanic. We're all team. Anybody who wants to fly the airplane has to come in. If they have an ego, it ain't allowed. They got to do it for the right reasons. We're preserving history. We're preserving the icons of the greatest generation. The tools that every man that went in the air was a volunteer. And every woman that went in the air, don't forget the WASP, they were all volunteers. No one was ordered into the air. At a time when their loss rate was 50% with the 8th Air Force, young men were still lining up to join. So you got to understand that. You got to respect that these are the icons of that generation. And that's when we do it. These are the icons. We got to preserve that. We got to preserve the history. There's a 94-year-old gentleman sitting under the left wing of my airplane right now. B-25 pilot, Island Bale, flew combat in the South Pacific in World War II, was on a bombing run. Bomb doors open when he got a call on the radio that war was over, abort. He was about to bomb another Japanese airfield in the Philippines. But he's sitting out there in the airplane. There's the story. And people got to respect that, respect that generation, respect what all that stands for. You know, how many people know that about the Dula Raiders, for instance? 56 young Americans are down in China because they wound up, they're arriving at night, no beacon, the whole story. 56 young Americans were saved by simple Chinese peasants that knew that their assisting these American airmen would cost them their lives if the Japanese caught them. But yet they did it anyway. 250,000 Chinese were massacred by the Japanese, these infuriated Japanese troops. Those are the kind of stories we got to keep telling, we got to keep alive, because it's not being taught that well in schools. I was talking to a group, Bill Fisher brought a group out to the airplane, a young high school group. I was talking to them, none of them knew these stories. And you got to remember who your friends are too. Today you talk about China, everybody always talks about the trade wars and this. You don't think about who our friends were in World War II. Okay, when entire villages were massacred because they helped a young American, helped save one young American. So burden that the Raiders have carried all their life. And just a couple of years ago, just as an aside, since I mentioned that, Dick Cole, who's the only surviving Raider, wanted to make certain that the Chinese were officially thanked. So we held 2 receptions in Washington, D.C., one for the Taiwanese delegation, one for the other delegation from People's Republic. Exact identical receptions so that he could personally thank the Chinese people for the assistance they gave to the Raiders back in April of 1942. But anyway, the guys that come in our hangar, the guys and the gals that come in our hangar, they got to first understand history. They got to understand why we do this. We don't do it for any personal glory ourselves. We do it because we're trying to preserve that history. And to do that, we've got to have an income stream to try to do that, because it's getting more and more costly. I was telling a gentleman yesterday, I just bought 2 new tires for the airplane. It's $13,000 for 2 tires. So we have to have an income stream to be able to support the airplane and the expenses to keep it flying. So, you know, we have a rides exemption. So some events we go to, like, you know, last weekend, we were over at Melbourne, down in Melbourne, Florida. And we took, I think, 50 people for rides in the airplane. And to give them all a history lesson at the same time. This is what it smelled like. This is what it felt like. This was like it was like to ride. But just a few years ago, we also applied for and was able to get an exemption because it's a limited category airplane. So with a limited category airplane, you can't do, you know, rides for hire or anything for hire. So was able to get an exemption to do flight training for hire, because the FAA recognizes any flight training is good for safety.
Correct.
And so was able to get an exemption to be able to do flight training. So now the Delaware Aviation Museum has a B-25 flight training program. You mentioned Paul a while ago. Paul is a designated examiner. So we have the instructors, the examiners, all on staff. It's completely self-contained. Whether it just be an enthusiast that just wants to know more about the B-25, that wants to know the history of the B-25, wants to know what makes it click, what makes it work, how does it perform, how do you put gas in it, how do you do everything. So full long day ground school, anybody can come to that. But then if you want a second command type rating, that's another day of flying. And then the flying, and you can walk away with, leave that day with your ticket in your hand, and on the back side of your pilot certificate it says type rating B-25 second command. That's a pretty cool thing to have on your pilot certificate. Okay.
Now you tell me.
Yeah.
Now you tell me. I got to go back.
But the more serious folks that want to get a full type rating, that's an additional 7 days of flying, brief, fly, debrief, and then it's a very well-defined syllabus. You work your way all the way through until your recommendation ride, and then Paul climbs in the airplane with you, and we do a full type rating check ride. Jim Tobel, who you know very well, Jim was our first graduate of the type rating school. And he's such a such a phenomenal warbird pilot. He actually graduated a couple of hours early on the curriculum. But
is there a statute on the flight experience? Getting your second command?
It's in your logbook, isn't it?
It is?
Okay. No. All you do is just fly a check ride with Paul, and he'll...
Okay. This is just second in command, not...
Yep.
Okay, not type.
Yeah. But also, you know, if it's a pilot, as long as you get... And to do the flight training, you have to have at least a multi-engine rating and a current medical. Okay. We've had a number of foreign students. We know the process for getting a U.S. equivalency license so you can do flight training in the U.S. That's no issue. And you know, interesting thing, starting about a year ago, and I didn't think about this initially when we set up the program, we've had some corporate flight departments send their pilots there for, they call it recurrency training, because as you know, you've flown so many different kind of airplanes. The more airplanes you fly, the better you are at flying any one.
Correct.
Because you experience level. So some corporate flight departments who may be operating a Citation 10 day in and day out, day in and day out, day in and day out, they feel their pilots need a little extra experience. So they'll send them to us, let them get their second command type rating. It's a pretty cool thing to do for an employee, but it gives the pilots a completely different experience level.
It makes them appreciate that little steering tiller on their jet.
Yeah, well, you don't have that at B-25. You get, your feet are active, your throttles, you're really working it.
Yeah, you use all the senses on that. Larry, and I know that you have had, and I heard a vicious rumor, and I'm glad it's not true, that Panchito is for sale. It's not for sale.
It's not for sale now.
Airplane.
No, it is not for sale now. We have a great team that are helping to maintain the airplane. Just a phenomenal team. And it's taken a lot of the load off of me to allow me to be able to keep my sanity and not have to be in the hangar 7 days a week like I was for a long time.
Yeah, and you deserve, let's see, you're 46 years old now, 47?
No, I'm 27.
Okay, yeah. Okay. Well, but you deserve a little bit of time for Larry to go out and have some fun. Yeah. And hopefully we see you up in the Susquehanna Valley in June.
Yeah, well, hope to. Maybe bring one of the tiger moths up there or a chipmunk. We have a chipmunk on the way and an L-19, so maybe one of those airplanes. That'd be a lot more appropriate. But
Larry, we've only got a few minutes here, but I want you to tell the listening audience, we're streaming live on the internet, that you mentioned, yeah, we got an L-19, got a Tiger Moth, got this, got that. It sounds just so flippant, but if you want something bad enough and hard enough, you're going to find out and figure out a way to get it. You've worked hard to get to where you are.
We had a group of kids come to us down at Melbourne, a gentleman that has been very involved with this special school for kids that have literally been thrown away. And they're just doing a phenomenal job with these kids. So these kids want to ask me, what's this airplane cost and what's it worth and all that? And I sit them down outside after we were finished and let them all sit in the airplane and play pilot and shoot the guns. And I said, when I was 9 years old, my first job was crawling on my knees through a cotton field with an 8-foot-long sack dragging behind my shoulder, picking cotton and stuffing it in our sack from sunrise to sunset. I said, nobody's given me anything. That's how I started. I've earned everything that I have by working hard. I said, my daddy had a 5th grade education, but he taught me one thing, the most important and valuable thing you can, the difference in right and wrong and how you treat people. So those are the valuable lessons my father taught me, and I've used that as a principle. But these airplanes that we're talking about, we founded the Delaware Aviation Museum with just a very small nucleus of airplanes, and Dr. John Burson up in Douglas, Georgia, donated the 2 Tiger Moths. So the airplanes have come to us through donations because people believe in the same mission we do, to keep them flying, tell the stories. The history needs to continue to live.
And I'm proud to say, knowing that you're active in the industry, it will continue.
Well, I'm going to keep trying.
And anything that we can do to help you, Larry, count on us. There's not a person behind these that wouldn't go out there and be honored to polish a square
well,
foot
and I want to get one quick thing into. This is my 40th year at Sun and Fun. I've been coming here a long time. First year I was here, we had 12 airplanes out on runway 5, Warbirds. My brother's motorhome was Warbird headquarters, so that was it, a dozen airplanes and an old beat-up motorhome. And look at it today. But there was a time when Sun and Fun seemed to have lost its charm. It seemed to have lost its mission, I guess you could say. But what Lights and Greg Gibson and yourself and others have done with this Aviation Center for Excellence, it's like everybody suddenly has this new spark, this new energy, this reason for doing all of this. The volunteers out here driving the tugs and herding people and everything, they're all here doing it for a reason. And that's for these young people, like the ones you got working here. Y'all have graduated, what, 90 private pilots now?
Yeah.
To the Aviation Center for Excellence? That's phenomenal. And these kids don't have to pay a penny for that. So we're perpetuating aviation, we're teaching that next generation. So what you all are doing here is just nothing short of phenomenal. I've seen Sun and Fun almost since its inception. And
you've seen the ups and the downs.
I've seen the downs. I've seen, and right now, what y'all have, what Lights and Greg and yourself and the others here, the board has done, and the mission that you're doing, it's just nothing short of just absolutely phenomenal. And it's made this whole place. People want to be part of this because of the mission and where it's all going to.
Yeah, and we're going to keep it going.
Yeah,
for that very reason. That's why we're here, Larry, and that's why we're glad to have you here.
Well, it's always fun to see you, Ben. You
too, sir.
Okay.
I don't know how we can finish this up. It's hard to top that. As a matter of fact, I think we're just going to take the rest of the day off. You can't top that. So we're just going to head on out of the flight line. I want to go and leave a few finger smudges on Panchito because if I smudge it, I get to polish it. So we're going to go have some fun out in the flight line. Come join us here at Sun and Fun, 45th Annual International Fly-In and Expo. I'm Ben Coleman, one of your many hosts here at the Florida Aviation Network. We'll see you next interview.